Hi, and welcome to Once Upon a Nightmare. I'm your host, Amy Metcalf.
And I'm your other host, Ashley Dory, and welcome to today's nightmare.
So today we will be discussing basically haunted folklore within our respective areas. So from me, that would be Montreal, and for Ashley over here, that would be Nova Scotia.
All of Nova Scotia, because the town where I live is just very small.
Very small. And there's just so much in Montreal. I feel so bad. I wish I could share some of mine with you.
One of mine actually kind of includes Quebec. So a little bonus at the end.
Well, sit back,
grab a snack,
and let's get to it.
So I'm really actually very, very, very excited about this week's topic. So it's not really ghosty. Like the stories that I have aren't really ghosty. But they are pretty gruesome, and they are, if you think about it, pretty freaking terrifying. So
one of mine is really gruesome, like really gruesome. I told you a little bit about it and you're like, oh
yeah.
But yeah, no, exactly. Like I love this kind of thing. Like I remember when I went to Ottawa, like Ottawa has a lot of ghost tours as well. And we also stayed in a haunted it used to be an old jail, and they turned it into a hostel, and it's supposed to be really haunted. And they actually have like, they used to have where if you spent the whole night in one of the rooms in death row, you got your thing for free. And I would have totally been down, but I guess they had canceled that out. So I was like, hell yeah. Like,
in a heartbeat.
Down. But they didn't have it anymore, and I was like, fuck.
There's a prison just across the border in New Brunswick, in Sackville. Well, it's not really in Sackville, it's in Dorchester. Anyway, it was an old prison at one point that has now been turned into an Airbnb where you can stay in a prison cell for a night.
Yeah, like prison. In the hostel, like it's all prison like you have like lockers, and then there's some bunk beds, and then some have like just like single beds or like a double bed, so you can just be with you and your partner. And in a lot of them you're like sharing with a stranger. The bathrooms were actually really nice, like the showers were really nice, surprisingly, for a hostel. And then you also got a free tour with every like thing that you got to, like, whenever you stay.
I don't know how comfortable I would feel. See, the hostel situation, sharing a room with somebody that I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it was me and two of my friends, and then this other guy, and one of my friends like was a really bad snorer, and he thought she was dying or something because he woke up. He's like, "Are you okay?" She didn't hear him. I think I heard him. I can't remember, but it was like a few years back, and it was really funny.
Oh, awful. That would be so much fun. Except I can't do the hostel situation. So like, I mean, I guess.
Well, like again, like they have like rooms that you can share with just your friends. Like if there was like sorry, there's like a fly. So like you can have like rooms where you can share with your friends or just your partner, but like yeah, so it's not too bad.
That's my cat.
The dog? Oh, the cat.
That is most certainly my cat. So I think I'd like to go first this time.
Yeah, go ahead.
And just start off with something a little local, a little ghosty, a little spooky, if you will.
Yeah. I'm gonna start with
what?
I'm gonna start with like my longest one first, because like get that out of the way.
I have two that are really long. Well,
yeah.
Not really long. The second one's not as long. I do have pictures and stuff that will be going with my stories that will be put up on Instagram.
Yeah.
But yes, so I would like to just get that out of the way. So the first one is titled, so I'm going to be looking off over here just because my other screen where my story is up here. So the first one is called The Amherst Mystery. So for those who do know me or don't know me, I live in a town called Amherst in Nova Scotia. This is a very famous story. We actually have a festival in October called Esterfest. It's centered around this woman, and the things that went on with her. She did live on Princess Street in Amherst. So if you want to Google Maps that.
Just don't show up to the house. If
Don't
do
show it
people
to
live in the
people's
house?
house. People do live there still.
Yeah.
Don't go there. Uh,
Oh,
so
we should have a trigger warning because of like the gruesome in some of our things. Like
yes,
a lot of it has to do with death of babies. I don't even want to say it, like death of babies
rape.
and yeah. So there's that trigger warning just so everybody knows.
There's,
But
there's
other than
sensitive
that,
subjects coming up.
I'm gonna leave that one for last. But
Well,
and
my
I
first one isn't that great. The second one isn't that great. My last one is just it's better. So let me go ahead and get started here. The Amherst mystery centered on Esther Cox, who lived in a house with her married sister Olive Teed, Olive's husband Daniel, and their two young children. A brother and sister of Esther and Olive also lived in the house, as did Daniel's brother John Teed. According to Hubble's account, events began at the end of August 1878, after Esther Cox, then age 18, was subjected to an attempted sexual assault by a male friend. This left her in great distress, and shortly after, this physical phenomena began. There were knockings, bangings, and rustlings in the night, and Esther herself began to suffer seizures in which her body visibly swelled, and she was feverish and chilled by turns. Then objects in the house started to take flight. The frightened family called in a doctor. During his visit, bedclothes moved, scratching noises were heard, and the words, "Esther Cox, you are mine to kill," appeared on the wall by the head of Esther's bed. The following day, the doctor administered sedatives to Esther to calm her and help her sleep, whereupon more noises and flying objects manifested themselves. Attempts to communicate with the spirit resulted in tapped responses to questions. Walter Hubble, the phenomena continued for months and became well known locally. Visitors to the cottage, including clergymen, heard banging and knocking and witnessed moving objects, often when Esther was under close observation. In December, Esther fell ill with diphtheria. No phenomena were observed during the 2 weeks she spent in bed, nor during the time she spent recuperating afterwards at the home of a married sister in Sackville, New Brunswick. However, when she returned to Amherst, the mysterious events began again, this time involving the outbreak of fires in various places in the home. Esther herself now claimed to see the ghost, which threatened to burn the house down unless she left. In January of 1879, Esther moved in with another local family, but the manifestations around her continued and were witnessed by many people, some of whom conversed with the ghost by questioning and rapt answers. Some were curious and sympathetic. Others believed Esther herself would be responsible for the phenomena, and she met with some hostility locally. Esther was frequently slapped, pricked, and scratched by the ghost, and on one occasion was stabbed in the back with a clasp knife. Interest in the case grew as the news spread, and in late March, Esther spent some time in St. John, New Brunswick, where she was investigated by local gentlemen with an interest in science. By now, several distinct spirits were apparently associated with Esther and communicating with onlookers via knocks and rappings. Bob Nickel, the original ghost, claimed to have been a shoemaker in life, and others identified themselves as Peter Cox, a relative of Esther's, and Maggie Fisher. After the visit to St. John, Esther spent some time with the Van Ambergs, friends with the peaceful farm near Amherst, and then returned to the Teeds cottage in the summer of 1879, whereupon the phenomena broke out again. It was at this point that Walter Hubble arrived, attracted by the publicity surrounding the case, and moved into the Teed cottage as a lodger to investigate the phenomena. Hubble spent some weeks with Esther and her family and reported having personally witnessed moving objects, fires, and items appearing from nowhere, and claimed that he saw phenomena occur even when Esther herself was in full view and obviously unconnected to them. He also claimed to have witnessed attacks on Esther with pins and other sharp objects and to have seen her in several of her fits of extreme swelling and pain. He communicated with the various spirits by rapping and listed three others: Mary Fisher, Jane Nickel, and Eliza McNeil, who were also manifesting themselves as part of events. With Hubble's professional help, Esther Cox embarked on a speaking tour, attracting audiences who paid to see her and hear her story. However, she met with more hostile reactions, and after she was heckled one night and a disturbance broke out, the attempt was abandoned. She returned to Amherst once more, working for a man named Arthur Davison, but after his barn burned down, he accused her of arson, and she was convicted and sentenced to 4 months in prison, although she was released after only one. After this, the phenomena gradually ceased for good. Esther Cox subsequently married twice, having a son by each of her husbands. She moved to Brockton, Massachusetts with her second husband and died on November 8th, 1912, at the age of 52. Hubble's book was published in 1879 and proved popular, selling at least 55,000 copies. The Amherst case was also investigated by the British paranormal researcher Hereward Carrington, who took statements from surviving witnesses of the events in 1907 and published them with a detailed account of the case in 1913. Other researchers looked at the case more critically than Hubble. In particular, Dr. Walter F. Prince, in the Proceedings of the American Society for Psychical Research, made a detailed case for trickery by Esther while in a dissociative state. All of that to say that poor Esther went her entire life being tormented by these spirits.
Yeah.
She was investigated by multiple like there, if you even search her name, it all comes up.
That's crazy.
Multiple.
I couldn't imagine, like that would be so hard, and like nobody, especially in that time, like nobody understanding like what you're going through, and it's like
I mean,
although even now like people would be like, you're crazy, like you need to be locked up.
part of me wonders if maybe, because I mean, there was somebody that, like I said, did do a study on the fact that maybe she was using a little bit of trickery while she was in a dissociative state and not remembering what she had done.
Yeah.
Which I mean makes sense. That's a possibility. I mean, back then mental health, especially in women, wasn't really looked at or talked about, you know.
No. Just throw them away.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need them.
Up. You don't need them.
No.
Get yourself a younger version. It's fine.
Just get just get yourself a newer version, like a newer version, and move on.
In 1996.
No, great.
Cheers.
Yeah. But you know, at least she found love a couple of times and had some children, and
she was able to eventually settle down, it seems, in her life.
Yeah.
Mind you, now she has a whole town. I kind of feel like, now I'm going to be like the odd man out in this opinion, but I kind of feel like the whole Esther Cox, like the Esther Fest, it's taking what this poor woman went through just like a tad too far, just a little.
Yeah. Like you're glamorizing somebody's like problems and despair that they went through for so many years before finally getting away from it. Like it'd be like people celebrating your trauma years later just because like, hey, look at what Ashley went through. Right. Let's celebrate like all her trauma.
She was crazy for like half of her life. It's fine,
but it's okay. We're celebrating her, you know.
She's got a festival, guys.
Like she should be happy. That's awful. Like, why do we, oh my gosh. But you know what? Like we do stuff like that all the time. You know, like I think we're just like, we need something to party for. That's all it is. A reason to drink, a reason to party, a reason to have fireworks.
I do
or
just
what
want to note, I do just want to note, it's been suggested. I just want to, this was one very important tidbit of the story. I was just looking at it and I was like, oh, I should mention this. That certain aspects of the alleged paranormal events at Borley Rectory, sometimes dubbed the most haunted house in England, may be linked to the Amherst case. I don't know if anybody remembers. I think that is the one. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that there was a movie. Ed and Lorraine Warren studied the case in England. Do you remember that? There was a whole anyway. I'll find it and link it later.
Yeah, I can't think of anything right now, but like
on the tip of my tongue.
It's so weird how something so far away though can like be connected.
Although I don't think it might be, because as I'm reading the experiences of the Foister family there in the early 30s, in particular claims that writing appeared mysteriously on the wall resemble events in the Teed household. Reverend Foister had previously lived at Sackville, New Brunswick, and may have been well aware of the case of Esther Cox. So in some ways, the most haunted house in England and this house on Princess Street in Amherst, Nova Scotia are linked together. So that was kind of cool. I wanted to point that out.
Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy. Poor lady.
I feel so bad for her, but to imagine just like being possessed.
It's almost like that case with like Emily Rose, you know, like the exorcism, right?
Well, there's the exorcism
and killing her.
There's a few that they ended up actually killing because whatever reason.
So bad. And it's so unexplainable. Like, is it like truly because of the times? Like, is it truly demons or is it just mental health? And because it wasn't like recognized or well known.
Now, see, the Emily Rose though, she was.
Yeah, I've heard recordings like where like she had the demonic like or whatever.
She was being treated for schizophrenia, and she went off of the medication for that. So,
right. It's been so long. Like I used to have that movie.
On advice of the minister, reverend or priest or whatever you want to call him, took her off of her schizophrenic medication because she didn't need them because she was possessed.
Oh yeah, it's always some cases it is, but listen, Jesus isn't always gonna save us. If he was, we wouldn't be in a pandemic.
Or would we?
It's funny, I was going for that too. Or would we? Really? Yeah, that's true. Okay, so the first story I'm gonna do is it's actually really close by me. Like I think it's about not even 15-minute drive away. I live closer, like a while back, but it's called the Mont Royal Cemetery, and so Mount Royal Cemetery, but French. There are going to be some French words which I'm probably going to butcher a lot. Like there's one I'm like a little iffy about, but listen, I do my best. I do my best for living in Montreal. Anyways, so legend has it that just after sunset, shadowy figures begin roaming the graveyard and lingering on its bluffs. Strange undead entities have been seen wandering through the cemetery, and at night, there are reports of paranormal shadows flickering about. The most famous ghost of the Mont Royal Cemetery is said to be an Algonquin warrior who has been seen near the cliffs overlooking the Chameleon Hood lookout, often terrifying tourists below. Mont Royal Cemetery is very popular with ghost hunters who have been found featured in Vice magazine, actually. So there have been many reports of paranormal activity in the graveyard, and unexplained photographs have appeared featuring ghostly images. Teams of paranormal investigators have reported seeing fairies in the cemetery. So there's even fairies around here. Folklore. We are talking about folklore. Okay.
I mean, all right.
I don't know if it's like maybe a drug induced thing, or maybe if they are actually seeing fairies, because who knows, maybe fairies are real. I don't know. I'm not sure how I
think fairies are real. I don't believe that there's fairies in Montreal.
Listen,
Maybe like
my special little place. Yeah, I don't think I could see them in Montreal, but like
fairies. Okay, we'll go with it.
yeah, I'm still not sure about fairies sometimes, depending on like what you consider a fairy though. But because there's so many different like variations, right? Like I don't know about a Tinkerbell, but
I mean, doubt. Okay, you have.
unless fireflies are like little fairies, Tinkerbells.
I would believe that. Okay.
I love like anyway. I'm getting off topic. So, teams of paranormal investigators have reported seeing fairies in the cemetery and have heard disembodied noises, including wood creaking and a little girl giggling. Children. One psychic likened it to the sound of a coffin opening. So the wood creaking would be like the coffin. Zombie apocalypse. That's where it's going to start.
Either shoelaces.
There or Flesherton, Ontario. I always said Flesherton, Ontario would be the beginning of a zombie apocalypse just because there's a graveyard right next to the high school. And the name Flesherton, I don't know. It's anyway. It should also be noted that the cemetery closes at 5 p.m. during the colder months, and that security guards patrol the entire graveyard at night in cars. One of the reasons for that, aside from the usual vandals, are rumors that black masses sometimes occur in the cemetery, allegedly involving the sacrifice of animals. This could be another reason why Mont Royal Cemetery is rumored to be so haunted.
God damn, Montreal. You messed up.
Listen, Montreal. Okay, so Montreal is apparently the most haunted city in all of Canada. We have 150 ghost stories, whereas like compared to Toronto, which has like a dozen, and then Niagara on the Lake, who they always say, "Oh, we're the most haunted," blah 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 blah. They're like, they only have 15. So, this is what I've read, but apparently Montreal has 150. But it's also because there was a lot of violence and murders and everything. People who came here are crazy. Like, sorry, Montreal. Sorry. But a lot, and we're wild. They were wild. And you'll hear that in some of my other stories. Oh, that scared me. So somebody wrote this website that I got this story from, and they wrote an anonymous letter. And in the letter, they were like, I wish to remain anonymous. So I created this email account, which I will delete within a day or two. I used to live in Montreal, and I did have a spirit follow me home once after a walk on the Mont Royal Cemetery. I was in a college at the time and with a friend. I didn't know it until that night when I was alone and woken up by a male figure quietly saying my name. I promptly I promptly told it to go away without even realizing how quickly I was responding and turned on my other side. By the time I realized that I had just seen and heard something abnormal, it left. But within a second, I was drenched in sweat from fear. I got the strength to turn on the light after a few seconds and saw nothing. I never had an event take place afterwards. No, I was not half asleep and imagining it. I can say for certain I was woken up by the spirit.
Ew.
So, right? And
Mm.
that happens, like a spirit follows you home. So the author also mentioned a male friend who has witnessed extremely strange and unexplainable things in the cemetery, including a mysterious cult of some sort with a circle of candles possibly floating nearby. The, the friend was also startled when a massive white dog or wolf appeared and started running towards him. I'm not sure about that. Like, it could be just like an actual wolf. I don't know.
I just got too.
But like, we're in a city, so I'm not sure. But again, like, if it, I don't know, or maybe a dog got loose. I don't know.
Somebody's
So
husky.
we're gonna go past that. But anyways, so there is no easy answer to the question as to who or what is haunting this hallowed ground, with almost 200,000 bodies. Like this place is so freaking full. Like they can't do any more. Including many people and children who died under tragic circumstances. There are a lot of possibilities. Indeed, the first corpse to be buried on October 19th, 1852, was that of a holy man named Reverend Squire, who had perished during the course of his duties. 4 days earlier, he was asked to go to the Ottawa Hotel to visit a sick merchant who was dying of cholera. The next day, Reverend Squire himself fell ill and then perished soon after. His burial would mark the beginning of a long series of funerals that is still going on to this very day. The cemetery also contains a section for children who died prematurely.
Yuck, I
Often
that.
often due to contagious diseases, as well as 459 war graves. So many of these military personnel, 276 from World War I and 183 from World War II, were killed violently in battle. Notable politicians who died tragically include Montreal Mayor John Easton Mills, who succumbed to typhus in 1847 while caring for Irish famine refugees, and Canadian Prime Minister Sir John Abbott, who was cut down by brain cancer in 1892. I hate how they said cut down. But anyway, there are many others who met tragic fates, including some of the victims of the Titanic sinking. Charles Melville Hayes, once the president of the Grand Trunk Railway, drowned at sea when the great ship sank after striking an iceberg in 1912. Many hours after the tragedy, his body was found floating in the ocean by a rescue boat and was identified by a gold watch with his name engraved on it. Charles Melville Hayes' corpse was transported to Montreal in a train from Halifax, and he was buried in the Mont Royal Cemetery on May 8th, 1912, almost a month after the tragedy. 5 more Titanic victims are buried in Mont Royal Cemetery, and there are also 5 in the Notre Dame de Neige Cemetery and 1 in the Baron de Hirsch Cemetery. There is also a commemorative. So these 2 other cemeteries are very close, and they were very, I think they were very filled, and that's why they started the Mont Royal Cemetery. But yeah, so, and as for the ghostly Algonquin warrior, there are many questions as to why he haunts the cemetery. Is he guarding something? Did he perish long ago in a forgotten war? Is his presence related to other First Nations burial sites found on Mont Royal? Historically, there have been discoveries of Aboriginal graves on the mountain. Honestly, there are probably a lot of Aboriginal graves everywhere. So it's so hard to kind of determine like why we see some in some places and some in not in others. Yes. So, but who knows?
Fun fact about the Titanic. I'm getting blurry. There's a restaurant in Halifax called the Five Fishermen that when the Titanic sank, bodies were brought and stored in this restaurant in Halifax. It's very, very haunted, apparently. But do you think I could find stories about that? No, no, none that I could source and, prove, anyways. So,
It's so crazy. Like I never thought that there would be like, it's so weird because you never think that there would be bodies buried from like the Titanic in cities that you live in.
there's
In
there's an there's a cemetery in Halifax that has an entire section dedicated to bodies from the Titanic.
yeah, like I always forget that there were people all over the world that were actually on the Titanic. I'm like, oh, it's not just an American thing. Like, I don't know why my mind always goes to like, oh, this is an American thing. Like, there's no Canadians there. But yeah, no. Even though I was like obsessed with the Titanic, so I should know this. Like when I was younger, I was obsessed. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Want to go to the Five Fishermen restaurant and eat one day. There's a lot of very haunted locations. Citadel Hill itself in Halifax being a very, very, very haunted location. Um, there are plenty around. I just
It's
didn't
just
buy
big.
the book to get
Yeah.
the story.
Oh my gosh, yeah, like to find a lot, like we wanted to do just ghost stories in general, but like I think we need to dive a little deeper, or where we don't have to pay for a book. Like I'm sure we will one day, and then we
Yes.
can have.
I will
But
happily buy a book to do research, but right now I cannot afford said book. So I'm looking on the free interwebs, yeah, internet,
how old are we?
or, whatever. But um, my next story is also Nova Scotia. It's not really a ghost story. It's more of something extremely horrific that happened here in Nova Scotia. There's multiple horrific things. Like if you're old enough, watch the movie called Life with Billy. It's about a man in Nova Scotia who abused his wife to the point where she shot him, and then it's a whole thing. Anyways, this next story that I have is called The Butterbox Babies. And I'm sure plenty of people have heard of it. If you haven't yet, buckle up because
I think there was like a movie or a show on it. I think that's where I heard of it.
The
But yeah.
Child Remains is what the movie was called.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it is a horror movie about the Butterbox Babies. I guess there's really no other way to get into it other than to just kind of get into it. So again, I'm going to be looking off to the side. I'm just reading what I need to be reading. So buckle up, folks, because it's about to get rocky. The Ideal Maternity Home operated in East Chester, Nova Scotia, Canada, from the late 1920s through at least the late 40s. William and Lila Young operated it. I have a picture of William and Lila, which will be posted to our Instagram after this as well. William and Lila Young operated it. William was a chiropractor and Lila was a midwife, although she advertised herself as an obstetrician. While they were tried for various crimes involving the home, including manslaughter, the entire truth of the horrors perpetrated there was not widely known until much later. The Ideal Maternity Home promised both maternity care for local married couples and discreet birthing and placement for children of unwed mothers. The home was the source of babies for an illegal trade in infants between Canada and the United States. During this period, the laws in the US forbid adoption across religious backgrounds. There was an acute shortage of babies available for Jewish couples to adopt. The home would provide these desperate people black market adoptions, charging up to $10,000 for a baby. Many of the babies in the 40s ended up in Jewish homes in New Jersey. At the same time, they would charge the mothers $500 for their services. At this time, the average wage in the area was $8 a week. Many of the mothers could not afford this sum and were forced to work at the home for up to 18 months to pay their bills. During World War II, business was booming because nearby Halifax was a major port, serving as the point of departure for convoys crossing the North Atlantic to England. Many of these ships never completed the journey. The sailors and merchant seamen would squeeze as much of life into their days in port as they could, and many women were left as unmarried or widowed expectant mothers. The ideal maternity home offered almost the only place that could provide for these women and their children. What was discovered later was that Youngs would purposely starve unmarketable babies to death by feeding them only molasses and water. On this diet, the infants would usually last only 2 weeks. Any deformity, serious illness, or dark discoloration would often seal their fate. Babies who died were disposed of in small wooden grocery boxes, typically used for dairy products. Thus, the term butterbox babies is used to refer to these unfortunate infants. The butterbox babies' bodies were buried on the property adjacent to a nearby cemetery, at sea, or sometimes burned in the home's furnace. In some cases, married couples who had come to the home solely for birthing services were told that their baby had died shortly after birth. In truth, these babies were also sold to adoptive parents. The Youngs would also separate or create siblings to meet the desires of customers. It is estimated that between 400 and 600 babies died at the home, while at least another 1,000 survived and were adopted. Even these lucky survivors often suffered from ailments caused by the unsanitary conditions and lack of care at the home. There's a newspaper article for the babies that were adopted into these homes in New Jersey, wanting to know where their parents are because they were never meant to be taken from their parents.
That's so sad.
It's incredibly sad. And I think I have a picture of the home where all of this took place.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's still there. I couldn't find anything about whether or not the home still stands. Probably because if somebody's living in it, they don't want people just showing up at the property, which is smart. So I don't have any information on whether or not the home still stands, whether it's been tore down, whether it burned down, whether anything about it. I'm fairly certain it would be easy to find the cemetery in Chester, Nova Scotia. I don't think Chester's a very big town, so
Yeah.
you know that the babies were buried adjacent to the cemetery. So
Yeah. And like what kills me is like it feels like it's almost like coming back to that, like, you know how like in the States, like a lot of states have declared that abortion is again illegal, and that like, so a lot of women are going to be having babies and not knowing what to do with it, even though we have a better system. But like,
I think it's the same, but it's different.
well, it's different because like we do have better systems in place, but a lot of
a lot of
who are also really young, who, a lot of kids who are really young though, who get pregnant and now can't have an abortion, are too afraid to tell their mom, their dad, or whoever they're taking, who's taking care of. And then they
backstreet
like,
abortionists.
exactly. And then like there was this one story that I had heard of where this girl, she was young, she was like she did cheerleading or something, and like she got pregnant, and she found out she was pregnant, but she didn't tell her parents, and she had the baby, and then she buried the baby. Like didn't tell anybody. But like it was so weird because she would message her mom like, oh my god, I got my body back again, like, and this was like after she gave birth to the baby.
And how does her mom not know? Oh my god.
And then her mom's like, oh, I'm so proud of you, you blah 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 blah. Like her mom instilled all these like really unhealthy body image things in her head. But like that's the kind of thing that's going to happen again with more and more people not being able to have abortions. And this is like a girl that just didn't even care. Like, you know, like, but like, what if that happens a lot more and more, like with teenagers? It's more like with the teenagers. And I don't know.
Yeah.
It's weird because you never, they're also going to end up like putting forth, and how many babies can we fit in the system? Like there's so many kids and babies in the system. It's really awful.
So many poor little babies that have no homes, no, you know. But what I think gets me about the Butterbox babies is that some of these children were just taken. Like they were taken and then the parents were told, "Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, your baby didn't make it.
Yeah.
You owe me $500, and if you can't pay it off, well, you're just going to work here."
Yeah. And like because like the babies were just taken right away. So they never got to see them. They never got to get a look at them, or, you know, and then they're just told, oh, your baby didn't make it, or they're off to their new family.
Which
But you
I
don't
think why now your baby is not taken from you. Like it used to be that your baby was taken and put into the nursery, you know, and then the nurses took care of your child while you rested up because you just gave birth. Now, when you have your baby's with you.
Yeah. And don't forget, there was also like a lot of babies being switched at birth too. So
Or
that's
people
why
just coming in and taking the wrong kid.
24/7, you know, or like mothers who lost their baby who go crazy and then steal other people's babies. So it is sad, but like
that house would have some bad juju. I don't think I could live in that house knowing
yeah,
what happened there. Don't think I could use the furnace knowing what happened in there. Anyway, I have another story.
Okay. I have this one. It is, let me just scroll. So Concordia is a huge college out here. So I think we have like a couple of campuses. This one, like there's a Concordia near me, but I don't think it's this one. So this one's more downtown, and it used to hold the building that it is in was a daycare, hospital, an orphanage, not a daycare, sorry, an orphanage. So it's called the Concordia's Grey Nuns Building. And it's at the corner of Guy Street and Rene Levesque Boulevard, and is one of the most haunted places in Montreal. So according to King, who is a researcher of the paranormal out here, and other sources, the building was built in 1871, and as the congregation's mother house, this imposing structure once housed more than 1,000 nuns, while also serving as a hospital and an orphanage. So, Grey Nuns resident Kayla Fanning quoted, "I find it quite creepy. In 2007, Concordia University purchased the mother house and converted it into a residence for undergraduate students. Concordia renovated much of the historic site except for the basement crypt, where 232 nuns are interred. The nuns' remains must stay there for health reasons, since many died of highly contagious diseases," says King. So there is 232 nuns' bodies in the basement of this now residential school where students who are going to Concordia stay. You're so creeped out. You're like, no. That is even more bad juju.
So much bad juju.
So students moving into the residence are literally sleeping above a cemetery, literally a few meters below. And a lot of students get creeped out by this.
I wonder why.
So King traces the ghost story's origins to a 1918 fire on the building's top floor, which then housed the orphanage. According to media reports from the time, more than 50 children were trapped and perished in the blaze. Donovan King of Haunted Montreal Tours tells the story of 18th century fur trader Simon McTavish and his hauntings of Montreal. Students have also reported hearing the trampling and crying of children above their heads, King says. Yeah. Although she hasn't experienced anything paranormal, Grey Nuns resident Kayla Fanning says she still feels something eerie in the building. I find it quite creepy. I feel like it's I feel like it's kind of like a ghost hospital. That's even creepier. Another resident, Melissa Harrison, adds that she heard these stories often. It's all that anyone was ever talking about. It's a lot more of a thing than I thought it would be. Now, there was also another girl who was staying there, and she would have nightmares of burnt children crying. And they wouldn't stop until she moved out and moved in with her boyfriend. Can you? Oh, like, I can't.
I would politely decline. Thank you for the opportunity. I think I'm done. Now, goodbye, nuns. Bye
bye. But can I not have all the debt that I've incurred coming here?
Bye.
Oh no. Yeah, no. I thought it was the one that was close by, but I don't think it is. I'm not really good with the names, and I know the one nearby me is on Sherbrooke, so it's definitely not that one. But it is like downtown, and it's
yeah, I think that entire building should just be torn down. That would solve all those problems.
They won't tear it down. It's now a historic site, let's be honest.
Are the nuns still there?
Yeah, they can't move them because they all died of really contagious diseases. So they moved them.
Doubt that the contagious diseases are still there this long after. Like,
yeah, they would be.
No, because after a body dies, it can't sustain anything.
It would still be there. It's dormant.
Ashley. Take them out. They don't need to be there. Nuns are creepy.
And then we have another pandemic in Montreal.
Listen, I have opinions that I can't say on the internet because they'll get me in trouble. So we're just going to move on to the next story. Let's move the nuns and just tear down the building and everything will be happy dappy. Okay. So my next story is fairly short. So this one's going to be a quick one. But this one kind of involves Nova Scotia and Quebec. So this one is going to be called Ghost Lake. 1 mile from the village. Jesus Christ, I can speak. I'm not on a podcast or anything. No. Hi guys, how you doing? Start this over.
It's late.
It's almost midnight here. 1 mile from the village of Monastery is a small body of water called Tracadie Lake. In 1758, the British forces at Fort Louisbourg planned to attack Fort Beausejour in Quebec. Since ships were not plentiful enough to carry all of the troops, some were carried to Canso Strait and then left to march on foot. These troops were to try and keep their English ships in sight at all times while making their way to Beausejour. Once across the strait, they marched onward to soon discover Tracadie Lake, overlooking St. George's Bay. Here they set up camp to train. During the day, they practiced in their red uniforms, and at night, their drums and music added an eerie atmosphere to the previously tranquil area. Local natives were quite fearful of their presence and would have called in Glooskap had their forces not soon departed. However, the music and drums of the evenings continued long after the troops moved on. Native elders claim that it's the evil spirits coming to haunt them. Some believe it's the spirits of soldiers killed in the battle at Beausejour returning to the site where they spent their last peaceful night among the living. Since then, no matter what maps may reveal, the lake is known as Ghost Lake to locals and storytellers.
It's but like I find like ghost stories like when it comes to like lakes are super super creepy. Lakes and children. Water and children.
Because when you're in the lake, like there, when you are in any body of water, there's a body in there.
There are so many bodies in all
statistically
water.
We have all swam at some point in our lives with a dead body. I am sorry to tell you. I am sorry to let you all know this. We have all done it. We did not know about it. What you thought was seaweed, it might not have been.
Could have been hair.
Might have been somebody's finger just tick, 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 tick.
Listen. This is why I do not like open bodies. Like I like being outside of them and watching them, swimming in them. Like I will.
I love swim. Love.
Just don't like not knowing what's underneath.
See, I'm good in deep water. It's when you're in deep water and you know that there shouldn't be anything close to your feet that you start to feel something and you're like, what on God's green earth is touching my foot in this lake right now? Because I know for a fact that I am not near friggin' lake grass. Nope, no lake grass, just tickling my toes. No, too far away for that.
Like I also have a texture thing, and I think that's what a lot of my problem is. But yeah, it's just no, thank you. No, thank you. That's why I like pools. Pools are great until there's a body in the bottom of that one.
Or until you're in the deep end and a shark eats you. Let's be real.
In a pool?
Okay, I am not the only person in this freaking life, and I cannot be the only one out there that as a child had an irrational fear that there was a shark in the deep end of a pool.
You can see the bottom.
Don't care. Completely irrational fear. There was a shark at the end of that pool.
Listen, I think that's the excuse not to go in the water.
I'm looking my dead ass in the camera right now. If you too had an irrational fear of a shark in the deep end of a swimming pool as a child, please leave a comment below so I know I'm not crazy.
And like the video.
Like this video. Subscribe,
or subscribe and follow and all that fun stuff. So now we are on to my last story, and it is very grisly. It's very gruesome. Ugh. I feel so bad for these people. So stories of hauntings and other paranormal activities seem far removed from our reality, but as it turns out, Montreal is the most haunted city in North America, like I've said. This is according to Donovan King, who again does those ghost tours, and he researches paranormal activity around here. Author of the Haunted Montreal blog and the foremost expert on Montreal's ghosts. Montreal is old in North American standards and has experienced a gruesome, grisly history. Indeed, from plagues to body snatchers. We might have to make a topic of that because I need to know more about that, to be honest.
Body snatchers?
Body snatchers in Montreal. To the violence of colonization, colonialization, the city's violent past has laid the foundations for haunting, says Donovan. By far and away, the most haunted place in Montreal is Saint Antoine Cemetery. Again, another cemetery, which is now known as Dorchester Square. The Saint Antoine Cemetery was a cemetery for cholera victims for over 50 years back in the early 19th century, many of whom were buried in mass graves.
It's cholera.
This
Sorry.
cholera, yeah. Sorry, again, it's late. I said it good before.
I worked in healthcare. You said it fine the first time, but I couldn't.
Yeah. Let me read my story.
Okay, sorry.
The cemetery was the background of a host of horror stories because of the heavy dose of opium given to those suffering from cholera. Sorry. Some unfortunate victims. I think it's because I'm trying like to go between like French words and English words, even though there haven't been a lot, but like, listen, I've had a long day and I've had to like speak some French.
It's late. We'll
Some unfortunate victims who were simply in an opium-induced coma were buried alive. Many years later, when workers were digging in the soil, they found coffins that had sustained quite a bit of damage as unfortunate victims struggled to get out of their underground prisons. That is like one of my fears, is like being buried alive.
Like, bitch, I'm not dead. Like, I'm not yet.
But because they were in opium-induced comas, medical
use the bells so that in case they buried people alive.
I think that was before the bells, and also because they were mass graves. Like there was so many people dying. Like they're like, I'm not gonna put like 50 million bells out here. But
probably would have saved a few people.
Yeah.
Leave it.
They probably still would have died anyways of their symptoms. Because like
I mean, they were strong enough to cause some damage to their coffins. They wanted out.
Well, that's because of the fight or flight mode coming in, right? Because you're terrified of you're in a coffin. You're buried. Yeah. So obviously it's like a mother trying to save their child, right? You get that dose of thank you, adrenaline. You get that dose of adrenaline, you can do anything. But anyway, so furthermore, pregnant dying women would ask that infant baptisms be performed at the ceremony. They believed that for their child to get to heaven, it needed to be baptized. Priests would therefore cut open the woman, exposing the child, and then sprinkle holy water on the baby before both the mother and the infant died. Many people have heard screams of agony in the square late at night. Strangely, one particular spot of the square, Place du Canada, has an above average number of medical emergencies, particularly panic attacks, heart attacks, and strokes. To this, the mass graves right under our feet is small crosses on the pavement. Yeah.
Didn't like that one.
No, like that is.
It left a real bad taste in my mouth.
I can't. Well, like they wouldn't be like horror stories if there wasn't something gruesome or horror about it. Like, you know,
being buried alive.
It's happened a lot.
Cutting open an already dying woman just to baptize the dying child inside the dying lady. And I mean, worst case scenario, in her sickness, if she didn't die, she would have lost her baby and she might have lived had she not been cut open to perform a baptism. I'm just saying, I'm throwing that out there. Religion, you messed up.
But this is 2021 thinking, whereas this was way before all that medical idealism of like, oh, we can cure things, you know, here's some opium. I hope you don't die painfully. Like,
I mean, like, I feel like there could have been.
Not in those times, Ashley. We are thinking 2021 where we have a little more medical practices going on.
I'm not talking about the medical practice. I'm talking about the religious practice of cutting the lady
Okay.
open and then baptizing inside the lady. Like that's that's
I don't know what I can tell you
a
about their.
practice that should never have been, I don't think, introduced. I mean, if the women died happy, knowing that their babies were baptized and they were going to heaven, then all the power to them, I guess. It's too late
And
now
they did
to say stop.
together. In all retrospect, they did die together. So,
Oh, yeah.
because imagine if, like, nah. You know what?
See?
It's a lot. It was a lot. I said there was going to be some gruesome stuff in my story. I
Well,
did say it.
there
I
was
did warn you.
there was gruesome stuff in all of them. It was just the fact the I can't even wrap my head around that. Like it's just making me stutter right now.
Different times. Different times. Like, I feel like if they did it in this day and age, I'd be like a little more worried. This was a thing that people were doing, but like,
I mean, a religion, I expect a little bit more out of you. Well, no, not really. I
do
don't.
you really?
Oh my,
Do you really?
I'm lying. I don't. You messed up on a lot of stuff throughout history. You none
You still are. You still are.
still are. Your nuns are still in a basement. Your nuns are still in a lot of basements. Um, I think it's time religion just
They left a lot of dead bodies laying around, and that shouldn't be dead bodies. And they made themselves powerful and made themselves scary and made people believe that if you have to do a certain thing to get to a certain place, and it's definitely not true. Like,
it's a
honestly,
person.
if God is real, he would love you for being LGBT, being black, white, Asian, whatever, because he created you. And he, like, yes, there are certain things that need to be controlled, like, let's not go murdering people. But that at that point, yes, people need to kind of step in and be like, you know what, here's a little room for you away from society. Like, and sharp things. And but like, other than that, like, if there's really a God out there, he would love you unconditionally, and you don't have to go to a certain building once a week to go and praise him. He loves you wherever you praise him, and whenever you can. And like, not deterring away from everybody's beliefs, but some of your idealisms aren't in the right place.
It's not even their idealisms. I think it's the religious idealisms of past past ways of thinking that haven't been updated. Like we're going based upon a book that was
It's not, and it's not even it's an original language, and not only that, but the language is dead.
yeah.
And not only that, but whenever you translate from different languages into English, it gets it doesn't translate very well. It does not translate very well, and a lot of people misread things and they take it into their own perspective because it's their own beliefs, and they're like, well, God said so. And it's like, no, God really didn't say that. Like, it actually says this and this and this, and that's even in the translated transcripts.
Right.
So and then a lot of the Bibles were very new, so it's just a thing to kind of like I like where they're like, hey, be kind to everybody, but when it comes, I don't know.
It's
I don't,
lost in transcript. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't make no sense, people. Let's just use our heads and use some common sense. No killing people, no acting like anything like that. Let's just be good people.
don't hate people. Do
Love
not
each
hate
other.
people for something they can't control, like the color of their skin, their sexuality, their sex. Like, don't hate somebody because they're a woman or a man, unless they really did something wrong to you. Then I go ahead, hate them for whatever. But the only reason you should hate somebody is for the way they treat you.
Yeah.
And if they're not nice to you, then you shouldn't have to be nice to them.
Mother, I always tell my kids is if somebody's not being nice to you, walk away. If they continue to follow you and not be nice to you, keep walking away. If they continue to follow you and not be nice to you, then you have every right to turn around and be not nice back to them. But up until that point, give them the benefit of a doubt because they just might be having a shit day themselves. Walk away.
And not only that, but also like speak to an adult, because like a lot of kids who are bullies are being bullied at home.
Oh God, yeah.
And
I'm not even talking about kids. I'm just saying this is what I tell my kids and what I tell even adults.
But like a lot of people who are angry is because like they've had trauma in their past and they just don't know how to deal with it and all this other stuff, right? So it's just like you tell somebody, or you, like, for adults, like, do the adult thing and block them out of your lives. It's easy, unless you work with them, and then you just
then you just ignore.
And if your boss doesn't do anything about it, remember, they will replace you if you die. You do not have to make them happy.
But I think that's going to bring us to the end of our episode for today.
Yeah.
If you have any suggestions, you can email us at at onceuponanightmarepodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to subscribe, click that bell so you get all of our updated information and notified when we post new videos.
And also don't forget to check out our Facebook page as well as our Instagram. So check out our socials. We do have our link tree usually in every single thing. So you'll be able to get to our YouTube, our podcast platforms, or any of our socials. And if you also want to, donate, our PayPal is in this link as well. So by donating, it helps us to kind of make these better, upgrade things. Like I'm filming off my phone. It would be nice if I could just do it off a computer as well. And then I can also share recording privileges with my partner here, because she does all the recording and the uploading, and I feel bad. So I do a lot of the social stuff, but
it doesn't take no time at all for me.
Exactly. So, and in our Instagram, sometimes we'll post pictures of like stuff that we've discussed in our podcast. So definitely check those out. And when you're on our Facebook, we will probably, when we have no idea what to do, we're probably going to post polls and be like, hey, what would you like to hear about next week? So go definitely check those out.
Yes, and like I said earlier, don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell so that you get notified every time we upload a new video. It helps us immensely to grow and get to where we want to get to with all of the help from you guys. And we hope you enjoy everything that we're bringing to you, and that, you know, if you want to see different things, please let us know. We are so open to suggestions and topics.
You can anywhere at this point.
there's so many that I can't even pinpoint topics anymore. So please help us.
But yeah. So, and we will see you next week with a new nightmare.
Yeah. All right.
No. All right. Bye.
Bye.